Hello, and welcome to a review
of the Synthstrom Deluge
new version of Firmware.
Version 1.2.
Yep, so there's a new, pretty radical version of the firmware for the Deluge. If you're not familiar with what the Deluge is, it's a portable synth/sampler/sequencer/groovebox. And the thing that's most obviously unique about it is this broad, zoomable palette for sequencing and live performance. I've done a couple of videos about it, so if you want a refresher, check those out. But I'm here only to talk about what's new in firmware version 1.2. So let's get started. There are a few very profound changes in this firmware, and the first is a complete removal of the limit on sample sizes. So the Deluge shipped with 64 megabytes of sample RAM, and that puts you in a mindset of using short samples. That's 12 minutes mono or 6 minutes stereo, and the Deluge does support stereo samples, which is great, but it sort of puts you in a mindset of building kits and songs with relatively short samples. But now, samples are intelligently streamed, and you can add as many samples and have them be as long as you want. So I decided to test this. I went online to a site that has stems of songs for mixing and downloaded a song that has 22 separate stems, over half a gigabyte of samples, more than 10 times the sample storage of the Deluge. And I built a kit that plays them all at once. So as I scroll through the different samples in this kit, each row represents a track in the song, not just a sample.
Time goes by and he can't let go.
And of course I can mute stuff in and out,
It's been running from this too long.
bring it back in, and apply effects to it.
Come back time.
If you think of what this opens up in terms of a track that has both audio tracks and sequence tracks, I think this opens up a completely new world for the Deluge. I'll do some jamming with this at the end of this clip, but for now let's move on to some other features. The next really nice one is the ability to use an external audio source as an oscillator. So now, in addition to the existing oscillators, square, saw, even a sample, you've got the ability to choose line in, whether left, right, or stereo. And the idea is that you can use external gear and apply effects to it, or I can take the microphone here and use my voice as an oscillator upon which to apply effects. Testing, 1, 2, 3. So I can go ahead and add effects to it, like reverb. Let's add a little delay, like this. And I can
just go ahead and
transpose
Like you saw me
do before, including playing chords,
major chord, minor chord, 7, minor.
So I look at the live line input feature really as two separate things. The first is, as long as you're not transposing, a way to bring in live external audio and apply effects to it while it still retains its initial fidelity. And the second, if you're willing to accept a little loss in quality while you transpose notes up and down, you have a nice creative tool that can let you multiply notes, create chords, and have a little fun with it. Okay, the next massive new feature in firmware version 1.2 is resampling. And there are a few interesting things you can do with this. For example, you could layer a few sounds one on top of the other and then resample them to create a brand new sound and then go ahead and play with that. Or you can use it to free up some CPU power if you've got a lot of tracks going on and you want to consolidate them into one. And one of the more exciting options to me is the ability to take whatever you do on the device, including live audio input, and record it as a WAV file. This starts the process. So now I'm resampling the entire song, including everything I'm saying and any effects I apply, directly
onto
SD drive. I don't like this one.
I like this one better. Yep, that's enough for now.
So now the Deluge has created a WAV file, put it on the SD card, and I can go ahead and export that. Let's play it back and see what we just recorded. So now I'm resampling the entire song, including everything I'm saying and any effects I apply, directly
onto
SD drive. I don't like this one.
I like this one better. Yep, that's enough for now.
And now that the Deluge supports unlimited sample size, effectively I could bring this back into my project, layer on top of that, and so on. Two more smaller features in this update. The first is the addition of legato. So let me start this track. This is sort of a standard mono synth track. And by adding overlapping notes, I can create legato. The rate of the slide is determined by the portamento parameter. The next relatively minor update is the random arpeggiator. So up until now, you had a few modes. You had up and down. So now there's random. So that pretty much sums up all the new features for Deluge Firmware 1.2. Now, as I was scanning that the audio stems site I mentioned to you before, I found a really nice stem. It only, quote unquote, takes up 1/4 of a gigabyte. So it's only 4 times the sample limit of the Deluge, or should I say the former sample limit. But I thought I'd play around with it and show you how you can combine
Do not stand at my grave and weep.
stems with
I am
sequenced
not there.
notes.
I do not sleep.
So
I am
first,
1,000.
I'll add some
winds that blow.
effects
I am the diamond.
to the voice track,
Glint and snow.
reverb,
I am the sunlight on ripened grain. I am gentle.
some delay,
Autumn rain.
a little bit too much.
When you wake in the morning hush, I am the swift.
Maybe add a high pass filter as well.
Birds in circling flight. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there.
The nice thing here is you can literally
Do
mix
not stand at my grave and
an entire
cry.
track
I am not there.
on the
I did not
Deluge
die.
because you can apply the effects to the individual stems. So let's say this guitar, or actually it's a Rhodes track. I want to take some edge off of that using a low pass filter for this. There are 2 of those tracks, so I'll do that here too.
Do not stand.
I'll fine tune it a little bit more. Lower the volume of this stem a bit. So mixing is nice, but I think the real fun starts when you start adding your own sequences to the existing stems.
My grave.
So I'll use the piano roll to add hits in this drum kit. I'll zoom in to add notes between the notes. So here's an overview of my song, my drum track on the bottom, and the stems on top.
Do not stand at my grave.
I will mute the original drum track.
Do not stand at my grave.
And if the volume of my drums is a little bit too high, I can always go back
Do not
and
stand
lower
at my
it.
grave. I am not there. I do not sleep.
So that's it for the review of Deluge Firmware 1.2. If you liked it, hit like. If you want to see more, click subscribe. Thanks for watching.